My name is Elizabeth. I'm an associate product manager at Product People. I come from a design background. I started out as an industrial designer, then I moved into visual design, and finally I transitioned into product management. Moving on to our, before we start our topic today, we would like to launch a little poll and ask you two questions. The first one is, what is your current discipline? Are you a software developer, QA, product manager, maybe UI or UX designer, or any other? And the second question is, what do you think is the common thing between PMs and software developers? Is it working as part of teams, identifying user needs and problems, solving user needs and problems, or maybe not much is common between the two? So we'll give you a few minutes to answer, and really curious to see what kind of background everybody has. Personally, for me, as I already mentioned, I come from a design background. And let's see, so the results of the poll are in. I can see a lot of product managers here, which is interesting because this talk is about how to transition into product management. Also some software developers, UI and UX designers. And as to what is the most common thing, most of you replied that solving user needs and problems and working as part of teams. Okay, so moving on to our topic today, Alex will be talking about his transition from software development to product management. So whenever you're ready, Alex, the stage is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Elizabeth, for the intro. I really much second what you said, and I really much hope that things are turning out better now for the future in Ukraine. For today's talk, I would like to give a quick intro also of myself, and I really promise it's quick. And then we are jumping into the 10 things how to transition from software development into product management. My name is Alex. I am right now of today. I'm working like since 6 years in product management, and before I worked for 5 years as a software developer, and more in the space of like game development in Hamburg. And then also briefly in Berlin as an Android developer. I also was 2 years my own basically boss as my own startup. And what I'm really good at, I would say, is like product vision, sports strategy, road mapping, and OKR management, and was able to put that on the ground at WHO, the World Health Organization, HeyJobs, where I worked as a full-time employee. Also Mirado and basically which transitioned later to HeyJobs. I was head of product at Nebenan, and I'm also participating in hackathons like at Climate Founders. And now as I'm at Product People, and I did this transition basically for pure learning. We're coming also later on what does that mean at Product People. We are basically helping companies discover and deliver great products faster. What that really means is, so we are going in and power basically, or basically onboarding super fast at these clients. We work there for 3 months, 6 months, and up to a year and more. And that means that we need to be very, very quick there, align with the teams, align with stakeholders, and deliver outcomes very, very quickly. And as we are part here today with our community watching these, you are part of the product management community, which basically fuel with knowledge and insights in product management. And as of today, we are 9,000 members in that community. Use cases of that activity at these clients are, for example, you want to grow your product team by 1 to 5 product managers. and you have a PM going on parental leave, or maybe on a sabbatical, which is now also very common. You have a PM who left or is leaving your company spontaneously, and we can jump on very quickly. Or you have a temporary initiative, which is important to you and very urgent, and we can help you out. Or one other use case is you want to appraise a product team or a process. We did this already very successful at Zalando. I'm still doing this at Reshare, Omeo, or Freeletics. And as I'm talking a little bit about also hiring like new product managers for product people, here are the happy faces at product people as of today. And very happy to work with all these people. And now I really want to jump into the topic of today, transitioning from software development into product management. As I said in the beginning of the intro, I was software developer for 5 years, then now product manager for 6 years. And this transition personally was not without friction, and not only in the beginning. It's being for a longer time software developer creates certain habits, and you need to change that. And in this talk, I want to basically share with you what are these habits are, which you may want to get rid of, or maybe don't even want to develop. This talk is for every software developer who wants to transition. But also, as we saw in the poll, there are a lot of product managers here, and maybe some of you are already product managers, but still don't have fully made that transition yet. Still have the feeling there could be something better to do to get into the seat and the mindset, and maybe get the head on product management. But also this talk is if you're really much into product management, because what we are talking today is really about specific behaviors you want to learn and you really want to embody as a product manager. I came to this talk, first of all, because of my personal experience, but also because I was interested how software developers today really make that transition. And I went to this one source where a lot of people of like digital natives, people of software developers, PMs go, which is Reddit. So I went into the Reddit hole and just searched there about how software developers transition. And I was very much surprised about these answers. Some people said like they are very terrified of becoming a product manager, seeing all the responsibilities, seeing all the issues which arise when transitioning. Some are very appraise basically the product managers of like what are they doing, because they didn't see that when they as software developers or any other discipline. And there's, as you see, with 555 of the day of that screenshots, 555 answers, there's a huge demand of clarification what that really means. And I hope today I can give you that clarification. And now we really go into the 10 things after this intro after intro. So the first part I want to share with you is how to do the transition best is you may want to learn about product management while you are still a software developer. What does it mean? So you have, as a software developer, hopefully a very nice open product manager as an individual contributor on the side. You should reach out to him and run with him, shadow this product manager, and try to understand what other activities this product manager does while he is basically just working with you on the day-to-day business. For example, in Scrum artifacts, like refinement session or planning session. What are other things the PM is taking care of, which you currently don't see? So really reach out to your favorite PM and shadow this person for a couple of days. Maybe ask for certain resources they consume or share with stakeholders to also being shared with you. Yeah, this gives you more insight of what will be asked of you when you make that transition. The second tip I want to give you is like when you do this transition, maybe stick with the domain and probably also with the company. A lot of companies offer also internal applications. And this can help you if you learn now the new discipline of product management. You can benefit from knowing the context of the product itself. For example, a user on an e-commerce product is obviously a different user compared to a healthcare product. As a software developer for this e-commerce product, you may know the pain points, the desires of the specific user. And then if you change seats to product management, you basically are a little bit more aware of all these basic requirements, desires from these users. So the transition will be a little bit easier. The downside is, and you need to be aware of, is you may still get asked for advice in terms of implementation. If you were a long-time software developer for these e-commerce companies, software developers may reach still out to you and ask like, hey, how did you solve it? And yeah, you are free to give advice, but you should not stick around as basically an ex-software developer and help with implementation. And we're coming to this in a little bit in more detail. The third tip I want to give you is, especially if you're a backend developer or like if you're working a lot with databases, if you have knowledge in SQL, this comes very handy as a product manager. The reason is sometimes you don't have a BI expert. Maybe the team is small, maybe it's a small startup. And then knowing how to facilitate, grab the data you have in your database or in any other data warehouse, run queries on that and analyze user behavior or certain other data to make very good decisions based on this quantitative data, that helps a lot. Yeah. If you are making a big lever decision, you may want to still give that query to a BI expert, to an SQL expert as a peer review in the same way as you're doing basic code reviews right now. But knowing really SQL makes you your own analyst. This helped me in the past a lot. I was able to quickly find out something, share it with the team, and even in a refinement session, that helped a lot. The fourth point is, it's also very technical. It's about UML skills. Some of you know it, the Unified Modeling Language for dependencies, how certain models are interacting together. And because it's a very standardized language, you can basically take that approach when it comes to user flows, which are also very standardized. As you see that here as a small screenshot. As product managers, we use these user flows to describe how users navigate through an app or service, what specific conditions are in place to steer a user into a different direction. And having that UML skill helps you to also apply that on user flows, the standardized mindset, making it basically accessible for everyone else who knows user flows, because you are not basically describing something in your own language. It's, as I said, quite standardized and then approachable, usable for other PMs or other people in your team as well. So use that UML skill as well as a PM. The fifth tip I want to give you is to keep your open source mindset. As you may know, a lot of software out there, a lot of services and products would not be there without open source software. There are a lot of libraries, a lot of third-party solutions which you can inject into applications, for example, GEMS in Rails or in Android, where you can plug in frameworks which are open source. Without these, products would not exist. In product management, we have now also, due to product people, good community, we share knowledge out there. And I would love to ask you to do the same. When you transition into product management, share what you learned, share your failures, share your success, and make that open to the public so that others can learn from that and can get better. Yeah. This is basically also core value of product people. You see that on Twitter, you see that on YouTube, and you see that also with this talk today. The sixth tip I would love to give you is about making learning your side project. As a software developer, and I do this still as of today, is I love still to program. So I purchase a new domain, code something, I'm thinking about the user. bring it out as soon as possible. When you make the transition from software development into product management, you can still develop if it's your desire, if it's still your wish, but maybe apply also the learnings from product management. Not only develop just for the sake of development, just to get something out. Think about basically, why are you doing this? Who is the user? Who will use it? And is there some sort of desirability? Is there some pain point you're solving with that product? In the end, as a product manager, it's not about to ship something. It's not about the output of making a checkbox, I released something. No, it's about you solved something. You basically the outcome, increase often KPI, solving a specific user need. This is basically what you should take care of. Yeah. So tons of great writers, podcasts, you have it on Spotify, you have it on Twitter, etc. And in meetings like this one are really waiting to get your attention. So if you have time in after work, maybe think more about these kind of activities than just pure coding. And a very concrete example of this, in a very time-boxed manner, are hackathons, where you, for a week, or maybe just only a weekend, are sitting together as a team and come up with a solution for a problem. And really personally, I think the one problem is climate change. Therefore, I'm a big fan of the Climate Founders Hackathon, which will start in a couple of weeks. The application form is open. Feel free to also join there. And why I'm bringing up hackathons as a seventh point here is, if you join hackathons as a software developer, you are basically very desired, you're precious, right? You want to show something, so you develop something and it's out there. But if you, as a PM, want to join a hackathon, maybe also here apply the thoughts about the why, right? Do you really solve the user need? Do you really make an impact with that solution? And support with these thoughts the team around software developers, designers, or also the business person who's helping you in the hackathon. Yeah, and again, Climate Founders is an awesome hackathon. The eighth tip is becoming a good writer. And with that, I don't really mean becoming a good writer at Medium, or a good writer writing a book, which you may want to do at some point when you have vast experience on product management. I'm talking about writing here in terms of notes. Why do I say this? You will be surprised on how much or how many more meetings you will be pulled in as a PM. And then having a meeting after another will leave you very little time to think about what is the outcome, what did we talk about, are there action points, do we need to follow up? So while the meetings are happening, you want to write all these notes down, and in a way that you can share them easily and react easily on them. So it's not about writing everything down or having, for example, a software running which takes notes while everyone is speaking. No, it's really just getting the essence done. Yeah, and this skill is vital. Yeah, going then after a day of meetings, going out there and share it on Confluence or with your team will save you also from making over hours on just writing down notes. So that's a skill I really much, yeah, give you. You should really master. It's vital. The ninth point is a hard one because this is something when I made the transition, did not follow for sure. Is keep you away from solution discussions. As I said in one other point, when you make the transition into the same company, having the domain knowledge, people will ask you, how did you do this in the past? And because you have that knowledge, you will maybe feel you need to do this as well in refinement sessions. Yeah, the team is discussing, should we use this, should we use that, and please don't jump into these discussions. Yeah, only if you see the team really struggling and seeing like if you are not jumping in or being asked basically to jump in, you can assist, but try more to think about really again about the why and what. of the user story of the problem you're solving here. Yeah. In the end, the team will solve this problem anyway, maybe with a little bit delay, maybe they make a mistake, but in the end, they will really much enjoy it more if you give them context and not solve problems for them. Yeah, you're also sending out bad signals in terms of trust. Yeah, you chose to be a product manager. They are the software developers. They will find a solution. Yeah, try to system really much on giving them context, and then they make good calls. And as I said in the beginning, I didn't follow that. I was always thinking, I was an Android developer, I can give advice, but technology changes fast. But if you are not the software developer anymore, technology progresses, and at some point your advice becomes basically also wrong advice. Yeah? And this 10th tip I want to give you, and it's really, really controversial also for myself, because I constantly get asked, do you want to get GitHub access here at this company when I'm helping out? And I deny it. Why is it? GitHub or any other version control system for software is basically the working ground. It's the workbench for software developers, where they discuss and pull requests, where you basically see what they are doing. Yeah. And if you keep your GitHub account when you're making the transition, or you get the access, what you're basically getting is you're getting a pass on stalking what developers are doing. Yeah. Logging them in and seeing like, oh, there are 10 pull requests per day. Oh, this team seems to be productive, right? Or like checking in on commits and seeing what they're doing is just distracts you, yeah, from what you should really do, like writing user stories, talking with users, the most important aspect, right? Talking with users on a weekly basis, and sharing then this context to the team. This is your job, but basically standing behind the team over the shoulder and looking what they are doing does not help, yeah, and really ultimately will harm and maybe even destroy trust, which you will never get back again. Yeah, so really get out of GitHub, get out of Bitbucket or any other solution at your company, and stick to your domain. And a very last tip on how to transition is basically you can do this also at product people. We are hiring product managers from associates to regulars to senior PMs. So from various seniority levels, we are helping then these junior PMs in leveling up, getting them up to speed and giving them everything they need to be successful. Yeah. So if you are thinking about starting a career in product managers, feel free to go on productpeople.join.com. Or if you also know some business development manager who loves to sell not software, but for example, product managers to companies to basically help these companies, then also please share. The job will be really to grow the client base at Product People and retaining existing clients. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm happy to hand over to Elizabeth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Alex, and for sharing your knowledge generously. I would like to open up the Q&A section now. And while we wait for people to write their questions, I also have a question for you myself. I saw that you're a big fan of hackathons, and it's something that I'm a big lover of as well, as I have participated in a lot over the years. And my question is, what made you sign up for your first ever hackathon, and what kind of skills have you acquired that have helped you as a PM?
Thank you very much for the question. The very first hackathon I participated was not a hackathon I signed up for. It was basically a company hackathon with Mirado, which is now called PayJobs, so completely different business. And it was 2015 in the middle of the refugee crisis, which we are also now seeing with Ukraine. We basically spent a couple of days in Brandenburg next to Berlin in a house, and we are thinking about how to solve problems for refugees. We also invited refugees. We really talked with them. What are you facing right now? And a lot of problems were also about getting help from authorities, right? Where to apply, lacking German skills, finding people who can help them, go to an agency, right? Applying for certain things. So this was I think an awesome hackathon. We solved a lot of problems. We then also synced later and then with them and continued on certain products of that. And talking with really the users, in this case, really the affected people, right? They were really refugees, helped also to shape the mindset of like, you always need a person who tells you about the problem. As a PM, you can imagine maybe, but you are never really the user. Even as a PM, for example, you have, I don't know, for example, you use Twitter and as a regular basis, and then you are PM at Twitter, you are not the user. Yeah, you have a completely different context because maybe you got the premium Twitter for free because you work there, so you don't even purchase for it. You cannot make the same decisions. Yeah? I hope I answered your question.
Yes, I mean, that sounds really amazing because usually in hackathons, you don't get this opportunity to speak to the users directly. So yeah, that's something really great. So I'm going to be reading out some questions from LinkedIn. We have Himanshu, and he asks, how often does PM need to write query themselves?
Okay, good question. Yeah, as I said, this skill comes handy when there is basically no dedicated business intelligence team or a researcher who's able to write these queries. If you don't have that, I think on a weekly basis you do that. Or you are basically checking in on a weekly basis. For example, if you're an experiment running which collects quantitative data about user behavior, and you basically want to update your team how this experiment is running. And at some point, you're writing a summary about that. So writing the query depends on the frequency of experiments, but checking in on the query on a weekly basis for sure.
Okay, we have another question from LinkedIn from Kieran. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. He's asking, what resources would you recommend to help make the transition? Books, podcasts, maybe something else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good sources are, for example, Product Board and Product Plan, which are companies who also share a lot of content around it. Product people here as well in terms of the guests we have. So we have tons of YouTube videos elaborating on specific topics. I personally follow product people like or like thought leaders in product like Marty Kagan and Teresa Torres, who write also extremely good books like Empowered or the Continuous Discovery Habits. You can also follow them on Twitter. You can follow them on Spotify. I'm a big fan of podcasts because I can listen to them while running. There is a lot of tons of resources out there. The only thing you may want to check on how old the content is. For example, Marty Kagan changed his thoughts on specific topics on product management, how teams work together a little bit over the past years. So maybe may stick around to the latest 2 to 3 years in terms of content.
While we're waiting for more questions, I just want to add that we forgot to mention as well the community of product people, since we host these kind of sessions every Tuesday. And we also have a community, on LinkedIn, we have a Telegram channel. So that's also a very great way to meet other either aspiring product managers or product managers, network, connect with people.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Alex, do you think there are any traits or characteristics in a software developer's, method of work or in his character or her character, perhaps, that would make them, not a good fit to transition, and that you could, pinpoint them and say that this software developer could never switch into product management?
No, I'm not a big fan to throw people into boxes and categorize them. I think given the history of how we treated and sometimes still often treat software development as feature factories, I think we are not doing a good job in basically telling these software developers of like, what's the whole purpose of developing? What is the context? And that leads to misunderstanding what is product management all about, right? It's not just about writing user stories, running a refinement session, telling them what to do. No, it's also about sharing the context and often inviting them to user interviews in discussions about why a certain business problem needs to be addressed or does not need to be addressed. Yeah, and the reason, or because we don't treat software development good enough in that way, we don't expose them often with users. They have harder times to make that transition, from my point of view. Customer success, for example, they can transition easier because they talk frequently with users. Account managers talk frequently with users and decision makers, but they also have the business context which they can connect. And even QA, I think, is better equipped because when they think about the core workflows, when they think about the end goal of the user, when it comes to a specific task and the app, they think as a user. Software developers need more context, and I just have to apologize for basically for basically our community or like discipline of product managers if we are not helping you, giving you enough context.
Okay. We have another question from LinkedIn from Himanshu. He's asking, what are some common tools that PMs use to slice and dice the data for analysis?
Very good question. So the first thing is, I mean, data is vast, right? The first thing you always need to ask yourself is, what is the question you want to answer with the specific query or with the data you have there? If you just go out there and say, like, I want to just find out users who do X, Y, Z, yeah, you get a certain number. The first thing you want to do is basically, what is the specific question, and what will be your reaction? What will be your action based on an answer? Yeah. Do you start in a discussion? Do you reject a specific feature, or do you move on a specific feature? Yeah. By having this question very, very clearly described, you are also then able to say, like, for which user group or specific aspect of the product you are asking this question. Yeah. There you always have users in your product, in your service, which you don't consider ideal. Yeah. Which you are not bothered if these users don't convert because they have a higher churn rate. So you really want to narrow down any question and therefore all the analysis to a specific user persona. And with persona, I don't only mean demographics, really by the desires and pain points and motivation, why they are with your product and or why they are trying to get into your product when we are talking about the sign-up funnel, for example. Yeah.
While we wait for more questions, I also wanted to ask you another question. So product management, as we all know, has really blown up in the recent years, and many people are either looking to transition or maybe consider it as a first role. Is there anything you would say that, that they might not be expecting in product management, and maybe that you didn't know and you were maybe shocked to encounter? For example, for me, it was the amount of meetings that a product manager usually has throughout the day. So is there anything that maybe if you would have known, maybe you would have chosen some other path?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think a big surprise was basically, and that correlates with the amount of meetings, is like how many more people are basically counting on you or basically on the knowledge you may have. Right? It's the user is a stakeholder. The developers or the software department is a stakeholder when it comes to maintainability of code, for example, right? Tech debt, etc. And then you get tons of other stakeholders who are thinking you know it all, right? They're coming in and asking you like, Elizabeth, we are thinking of building this because 2 users asked for this. Can we do that? And they don't give you any time to think about it because they think like you have all the data, right? You talk with DI all the day. You talk with designers, so you know it's possible from design standpoint, right? And you talk every day with developers, so I expect that you know how long it will take. So I was surprised that everyone then thinks you know it all. I think it's very important that you share like very open about like if you don't know the answer, but you give them context about you are getting back to them or giving them basically pre-information, giving them something to read, maybe historical research, or say just, I get back to you in a week. Maybe have a meeting, share you some slides, share something before. Yeah. But that was basically for me a big thing at the beginning.
Thank you. Okay, Adela's asking, having the experience on both sides, what advice would you give to PMs regarding communication with developers? Is it something, if there's something that you realized only after you made the transition into the role?
If you get your question correctly, Adela, and feel free to elaborate on that in the chat, is what is very important is that you don't act as a manager for developers. So you should give the developers the feeling inside your communication, you're basically part of the team. You're in the same way just an individual contributor to that team. Therefore, you are there to help them to make good decisions in terms of the solution, maybe just a short-term solution, aka hack for something, or is it something they need to think a little bit in broader sense, where they then also come back and say like, hey, we can do this, requires just a little bit of refactoring here and there, 1 week more dev effort, etc. Give them as much context as possible and information as possible. Don't hide anything, and they will sniff it anyway. Yeah? And always present this information in a way that they can act, right? Don't share information, communicate with them, which leaves them with open questions. Yeah? Questions in the same way as if you are a manager, how can I help, are questions you should always ask. What can I bring to you to make that decision easier for you? Yeah, you are basically, you're really just a helper for them, because in the end, you don't develop something, you don't ship something, you don't put out the code, you don't ship the product. You are basically there to make some good decisions. Yeah.
Following up on Adela's question, have you felt that being in the position of the engineering team beforehand has helped you develop some sort of maybe empathy or having that perspective of what it's like being in the team in order to then be able to lead them as a PM?
Yeah, and let's remove this leading aspect here, because you are not leading. I think my transition was, and because I was long as software developer, or 5 years, maybe long for some it's not long, and I was also a team lead in one company, which made it harder for me to transition, because I still thought like I can help them. So my empathy, basically, I had a lack of empathy, I would say, not only for the users itself, because I rarely talked with them, right? I didn't really fully understand. I was just basically seeing this maybe is a problem. I saw it coming from a designer or coming from a founder who had basically insights. And I was thinking like, okay, let's just make sure that the dev team is as fast as possible to solve that problem. But I didn't have enough empathy at that point of time in the transition phase to question things and to support the developer team really to come up, which resulted maybe in, or not only maybe in some cases, to too late cut down on specific features because we are running out of time. Yeah, by having asked a little bit earlier stakeholders about why are we talking about this, why do we need this specific solution, I could have helped the developer team. And by also giving the authority to the developers to decide what to develop and not just blindly go in and write, for example, in the Jira story, like put the button on the bottom left and it should exactly do that. I think you're not doing a good job, right? And I didn't do a good job on this side. So again, like from my presentation, just give them, the user loves to solve this specific problem. How can we do it? Invite the users earlier. A refinement session shouldn't be only about putting a number like a story point estimation, but should also involve the solution generation.
Thank you very much for your answer. Well, while we have Alex here, if anybody else has any other questions, maybe doesn't have to necessarily do with, software development, but any sort of PM questions, feel free to use this time now. Well, we have him over here. And if we have no more questions, we can end our today's event here. So I just want to thank you again very much, Alex, for sharing your experience, your presentation. And as always, remember, you can follow us on all of our social media. We have a Telegram channel. We have a meetup for further events that we'll be hosting every Tuesday. And of course, feel free to contact Alex after this presentation. I'm sure he will be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yes, thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you very much for hosting me today. And yeah, thank you very much again also to the crowd here.